Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Prose Garden. I'm Francine Witte in New York City, and my co-host, Meg Pokrass, is in the UK. Today, being that it's April 20th, 420 for those of you stoners out there, um, it's Poetry Month, National Poetry Month. So we thought, because we're all things prose, why not celebrate the prose poem, which is really the perfect blend of prose and poetry. So we have 8 wonderful prose poets to read for you today. And I'm going to start. I'm going to read a couple of my own prose poems. I've always really liked prose poetry because there's a nice flow to it that, I write poetry and I write flash fiction, but prose poetry has that nice flow to it. It just keeps going. You don't have to, like, you don't mentally stop. There's no white space to stop you. So um, that's what I've always liked about it. And I'm going to read 2 prose poems here. This first one is called Where Did You Go? I went thin as pears, all sliced up and see-through. I went halfway to happy. I went to a place where I don't have to answer. I went sniff in the air. I went to the arms of another. I went bent as bones. I went to a job without a computer where I stand in a field and the sun wets my back. I went behind the numbers on a wristwatch. I went hundreds of miles from your eyes. I went all unmarried and you cannot stop me. I went where your questions stop smack in the air and long before they can get to my ears. I went to before I even know you, that spot in the morning about to begin, that curl of a mouth turning into a smile, that moment a flower opens up like a hand. And the second one is called Things. My life is filled with things, red things, square things, things I can sit on, things to help me eat. Things are everywhere, and since they are, I can't escape them. Time I tried giving up things for an hour, said to myself, don't look, don't touch. I tried turning myself into air, a breeze, a waft across a lavender room. When that didn't work, because how could it? I realized that things had won. Only one way to go. I had to become a thing. I sat down on my sofa thing. I called out some words, which are also a thing. Told the world, come get me. Use me to scrape a potato. Use me to paint a wall. Whatever it takes to make the want of me grow in your eyes. For me to be the thing you need. Thank you so much. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to my lovely co-host in the UK. She will read a couple of prose poems, the wonderful Meg Pokrass.
Thank you so much, Francine. I'm going to read a couple of brand new prose. I think they're prose poems. So this is the first time I'll try these out. The first one is called The Rapists of Childhood. We caught them in our bathrooms, checking the quality of the toilet paper. We saw them in our closets, sniffing our faux leather jackets from Walmart. They were the rain that fell from the gutters and dripped onto our dead grandmother's porch swings. We found small pieces of their broken zippers leading to an open window, and when we looked at the moon, a new man in the moon leered. We found them stalking our father's depressions, mocking our overweight mothers, commanding our elderly dogs to obey. They gave us matchbooks from distant restaurants, asked us to sit next to them and talk about our parents' real problems. We're here for you when you need us, they said. Every day of adolescence, they sat us on a bony knee and taught us how to say our names in French, like something a prettier child would already know. And the next piece is called Memories of the Bald Man. The bald man who lives with me surrenders his love to the dog, who surrenders his love to the bald man, who surrenders his love to the dog. The downy fur on his head is really just dust, he says, when I tell him that something new is growing there. It's springtime, he reminds me. He touches my waist and water runs down from his eyes. Even the dog seems to know that something bald is the ultimate surrender to the seasons. At least the dog is not yet bald, I smile. I too am losing my hair, but women don't talk about this. Instead, they wear hats and pretend they are happy to have less flyaways. This is what we talk about at the Dream Cafe. There are those days when I remember my husband's hair and the memories grow. I sit there thinking about the two of them together, bald man and hairy dog. I surrender to the worry and everyone claps. Spring, they say, is always the worst. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to my lovely co-host, Francine Witte, to
Thank you
introduce
so much, Meg. Those were wonderful. Love them. Okay, now we're going to start with our readers. First, we have Bethany Jarmul. Bethany Jarmul is an Appalachian, I think I said that right, Appalachian writer and author of 2 chapbooks and 1 poetry collection. Her work has been published or forthcoming in Rattle, Brevity, Salamander, Ghost Parachute, and many others. Her writing was selected for Best Spiritual Literature 2023, Best Small Fictions 2024, and nominated for the Pushcart Prize, the Best of the Net, and Best Microfiction. Bethany Jarmul.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I just want to say thank you to Francine and Meg for hosting us and for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. So thank you. The first piece that I want to read is called Unprecedented Weather Patterns. And this piece was written as a prose poem, was published as a prose poem in Gone Lawn, but it was selected for inclusion in the Best Small Fictions anthology for 2024. So let's not tell the editors that it's really a prose poem and not a small fiction. But I find that actually a lot of my work, when I'm writing narrative prose poems, can kind of be in that in-between, in that gray space that exists where we're paying close attention to language and also close attention to narrative. So this is Unprecedented Weather Patterns. When I was a child, my mother trapped my voice in a cooking pot, and my father sealed the lid with Gorilla Glue. They stored it in the basement pantry behind the jars of dill pickles and marinara sauce with mushrooms. Wherever I went, to the playground, to school, to church, I left my voice behind. The kids on the swings shrugged at my attempts to speak. My second grade teacher gave me a gold star for how silent, how still I was. Sorry, I think I misread that. My second grade teacher gave me a gold star for how silent, how still I was. My Sunday school teacher patted my head and told me this was how I honored God. Years later, I am grown in my parents' home alone. I find the cooking pot there, still tucked away, dust encrusted. I wash it, scrub it, try to pry its lid off, but cannot. In desperation, I place the pot on the stove and crank the heat up high. The waters of my voice begin to stir and stir until they become a rolling boil. Forceful bubbling pops the lid off. Through the ceiling, an explosion sent into the atmosphere. The waters forming mountainous, coal-colored clouds, releasing relentless rain, swirling over the land and sea, creating mighty waves, until my voice unleashes a tsunami, until my voice is a hurricane. Thank you. All right, my next prose poem is part of my prose poem chapbook called This Strange and Wonderful Existence that's available from Bottle Cap Press. And I chose this poem, it's called Things I've Burned. I chose it because I just received an email last week from someone who told me that she's going to be teaching this poem to her college students. So that was pretty special. That's probably only like the second time I've gotten that email from someone saying I'm teaching your poem. So I thought I would read it today. So Things I've Burned. My skin from sun rays, frying pans, glue guns, Marshmallows by the dozen, though I prefer them lightly golden brown. Pizza, waiting for its cardboard crust to combust. Burgers in the summer heat, the sweat dripping into my eyes and mouth. Journals scribbled with ink, smudged with tears I shed over boys I no longer love. Books I already read, but couldn't let my mother see. Textbooks too, calculus or physics, probably. Many bridges. Bridges where it's greener on the other side. A bridge to nowhere. A bridge to the past. A bridge too far. The bridges that I doused with gasoline to friendships that I craved. From words I said or didn't say, or should've, could've, can't believe I spewed that fire from my scaly dragon mouth, stood back to watch it crumbling and aflame. Thank you. My next prose poem is called When It Pours. This is a newer one. So, when it pours. It's blurry out there, my 4-year-old son says of the downpour, as if rain's essential quality is not its wetness, not the way it soaks through my cotton hood and clean hair, not its ability to feed the pepper plants, to quench the thirst of the deer, to refill our 60% water bodies, not the way it overfills the stream and surrounds our neighbor's SUV, floods their basement, carries off their trash cans while we watch from above like angels heaven hasn't sent. But the way it obscures our ability to see the mountain's edge or catch a glimpse of sky. When the rain stops, an earthworm smell will rise, a reminder of how my feet are growing up from the ground, even when my mind bumps the moon or my thoughts bounce off stars and boomerang with the asteroids. Somewhere in another galaxy, the answer I've been craving my entire life lives and breathes, but I can't see its breath through the storm. Thank you. And my last one here is called Gardening on Our Last Day on Earth. And this was published by Salamander magazine. So this is Gardening on Our Last Day on Earth. Plowing our hardened souls, breaking apart boulders of heart tendons, grasping handfuls of warm earth between our slender memories, weeding thoughts sprung from the roots of radishes, watering our hardy hopes and daffodils with slippery wishes, writing messages to God, to our past selves, to our imagined futures, with stubborn sticks in the muddy remembered, raking leftover laments into piles, leaping into them, laying underneath, allowing grief to pile upon us, leafy layer upon leafy layer, until our toes, our noses, the tips of our tongues are buried beneath, reaching toward one another until our pinky fingers embrace, waiting as our bodies decompose to feed our garden with the nutrients of death.
Wow. Thank you so much, Bethany Jarmul. That was wonderful. That last line really got me.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bethany is certainly like one to watch. So your workshops, Bethany, by the way, are just amazing.
Thank you.
Bethany runs these workshops. She posts it on Twitter. If you follow her, Bethany Jarmul, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just so good. They're so thorough and, really just terrific. So please, if you get a chance, see it, take one of her workshops and read her poetry and her prose poetry, and wonderful. And I think we've all had that experience of, you submit a poem or a micro and they publish it as a prose poem, or they publish it as, you send in a prose poem, they publish it as a micro, because that is just such like a gray area. Like that's a whole discussion in itself. Like, what's the difference between a micro and a prose poem? But I think, I saw a good definition. Robert Scodolero, our good friend Scotty, said in a comment that a prose poem is like a helicopter and a micro is like an airplane. And I thought that was a good definition, that the micro has a narrative, like it's on its way somewhere, and the prose poem kind of spins around. Like, that's how I always think of it. But that's just such a big wide open topic. But anyway, and as Lorette pointed out in the chat, Lorette Luzajic, who's just her wonderful Mackinac is just a wonderful prose poem journal. She said that, yes, Best Small Fictions does indeed accept prose poems. So you can wear that with pride. And, I think they actively were looking for prose poems to expand the that definition of the small fiction. It's not just, flash fiction, but it is also a prose poem, because that's the prose in the prose poem.
Yeah,
Okay.
at best microfiction, we also honor the prose poem. We don't make a big deal about what it is. It's just
Right.
if it works.
If it works, right. Yeah, that's always, I think that's always the deciding factor. If it works, So thank you, Bethany Jarmul. Lovely to have you here. Next, we're going to hear from Alexis Rhone Fancher. Alexis Rhone Fancher is published in Best American Poetry, Rattle, the American Journal of Poetry, Plume, Diode, and elsewhere. She's authored 10 poetry collections, most recently Triggered from Maclean's and Brazen, NYQ, New York Quarterly. A coffee table book of Alexis's photographs of South California poets will be published by Moontide Press in 2024. Her photographs are stunning. That's not in her bio. I just said that. She calls the Mojave Desert home. AlexisRhoneFancher.com. Alexis Rhone Fancher.
Thank you. Hi. Lovely to see so many people I know and new people as well. I have 4. I'm going to read 3. I'm not very big on patter. I love writing prose poems. I've had them accepted as flash fiction. People will make it fit what they want it to fit. I'm going to start with a poem called Grab Shot. And all right, it's for, you can kind of see this guy. This is maybe not.
Yeah.
There he is. Sort of. Anyway, it's called Grab Shot. You Ferrari, baby. You Lotus Elan. You dream man. Smooth moves, always some sleek bitch on your arm. And me sidekicking, just afterthought. So I shoot you, replicate you in oversized prints, spread out on my bed like facsimile. Those blown up biceps, fine-tuned torso, face up on my pillow, your perfect pores. How the camera loves you, baby. Those smoldering Billy D shots aimed straight at a woman's vulnerability. How you juice them, seduce them, your voice dropping an octave when a woman calls and you get all very white. You've kept up the upkeep, changed the oil, sleek, toned, you Alpha and Romeo, baby. You candy apple, you metal fleck. The wind buffs glitter all around you. That night at my studio, after one too many Hennessy, we stand toe to toe and I turn my lips to yours, ask, why not me? You grab my ass with 2 hands, squeeze and shrug. Baby got no back. And I flashed to that chorus line of slow-eyed beauties you bedded, each one bottom heavy, riper than I could ever be. As if derriere was the measure of a woman. Let's get back to work, you say. I flick on the lights. Oh, baby, you shimmer, you gleam. Stand up, I tell you. Pull the shirt over your head. Now you can't see me for real. You who can't see lust for forest, for trees. You who wouldn't know love if it bit you on the ass. Little change of pace. This one's called Midnight in the Backyard of Lust and Longing. It was first published in Slipstream. The Sophists are at it again. Screw yous ricochet off our common walls. Invectives landmine my window. You cheating bitch. Like clockwork, this drunken Friday night climax to their ceaseless lovers' quarrel. I'll kill you. I hear the big one growl. Then the smash plates, the screams. By the time the cop arrives, full out brawl, the women spilling from their back door, tussling across the no man's land between their tiny backyard and mine. Worse than animals. This time it's Holly, the younger one, dragged to the patrol car, yellow hair wilding, small hands cuffed behind her back, kicking at the cops with those Daisy Dukes, an army jacket wafting her silhouette. More clothes than she had on the last time the cops rolled up, or the time before. It's almost dawn, and the trees shiver in the fog. Raccoons slink through the tall grass. Marie, Holly's better half, paces the yard in a blue bathrobe and slippers, smoking a cigarette, sobbing as the cops jam her lover into their car. Watch her head, she cries and flings herself across the yard, lunges for Holly through the glass. Baby, baby, she sobs, the reason for their discord long forgotten. Holly mouths a sloppy kiss. Marie opens her robe, presses herself against the glass. Can you believe it? I would do anything to be loved like that. I'm looking at time here. I have two more. I don't know if I can get through them, but we'll try. This one's called The God for Broken People, first published in the San Pedro River Review. And it starts with an epigraph from Roxane Gay. There is a God for broken people. This is the God for the second rate, the one who waylays you at the party, plies you with bourbon, fucks you in the kitchen, makes you walk home in the rain. This God shines in the runoff. This God hustles the night. This God minds the maimed, culls emotional cripples off the top like cream. This God is a shape shifter, a dumpster diver, the God who loiters at the corner of De La Rosa and Despair. This God drinks alone. The God for broken people trolls the city for discards, marries the exploited with the lost. This God sweeps up the miscreants, gusts their darkness into night. This is the God of no hope, no money. This God has your back when you backslide. This God bets on you to fail, hides in your broken places. This God is willing to wait. When you're ready to surrender, remember, this is your last best chance. This God will not stick by you, won't give you false hope. This God will kill you or save you. Choose. And my last one is a little bit different. It's called Cruel Choices, and it was published in Askew in 2016. Cruel Choices. When my husband's two grown daughters are in town, the three of them go to the movies or play pool, share dinner every night, stay out late. I haven't seen my stepdaughters since my son's funeral in 2007. When people ask, I say nice things about the girls as if we had a relationship. When people ask if I have children, I change the subject, or I lie and say no. Or sometimes I put them on the spot and tell them yes, but he died. They look aghast and want to know what happened. Then I have to tell them about the cancer. Sometimes when the older daughter, his favorite, is in town and she and my husband are out together night after night, I wonder what it would be like if that was me and my boy, if life was fair, and rather than my husband having two children and I none, We each had one living child, his choice which one to keep. Lately, when people ask, I want to lie and say yes. My son is a basketball coach. He married a beautiful Iranian model with kind eyes, and they live in London with their twin girls who visit every summer. The same twins his girlfriend aborted with my blessing when my son was 18, deemed too young for fatherhood, and everyone said there would be all the time in the world. Thank you.
Wow. Beautiful and stunning,
Thank you.
Alexis. Really very powerful and just beautifully crafted. And yeah, you're getting a lot of astonishings and wows in the chat, so for sure. And I look forward to your photograph book.
The book will come out. It's 100 Southern California poets,
Nice.
photographed over a 10-year period, published by Moontide Press, hardcover, coming out for AWP 2025, which will be in Los Angeles, and there'll be a big opening. So stand by.
Fantastic. That's great news for us to like be able to look at all these beautiful photographs. And your photographs that you just post on Facebook are always gorgeous too, not of people, but just of places and, you know, really just magical.
Thank you very much. It's my other passion.
Well, you serve both passions well, Alexis. Thank you for joining us today, Alexis from Fancher. Hey, our next reader is Brad Rose. He's the author of 5 collections of poetry and flash fiction, Lucky Animals, No Wait, I Can Explain, Pink X-Ray, Detonations, and Momentary Turbulence. His poetry collection, Word and Edgewise, is forthcoming. His prose poetry has appeared in the American Journal of Poetry, Baltimore Review, New York Quarterly, Lunch Ticket, Puerto del Sol, Clock House, Folio, Best Microfiction 2019, Unbroken, and other journals. His website is bradrosepoetry.com. Brad Rose.
Thanks, Francine. Thanks to you and Meg for having me. Again, I'm going to refuse to read after Alexis. That was just so astonishing. It's going to be impossible to follow that. But anyway, I don't know if I should be asked to be bumped down to the bottom of the reading list or up to the top of the, I don't know. I'm not sure which direction to run. But anyway, I'm going to read 6 pieces. They're 1 paragraph each. Apologies if you've heard 1 or 2 of these before. The first one is called Hat Store Window. Thanks to my invisibility cloak, I'm enjoying the darkness. You know me, if I could, I'd dance the night away. In fact, because I'm no longer afraid of the devil's cartoons, I'm planning a trip to the real Disneyland. In merely 3 short weeks, anyone on the internet can learn to speak a new language. It's a small world after all. Just imagine your internal organs. Of course, not your appendix, that useless little finger buried deep in your slippery belly. That's much too ugly. Although, like extraterrestrial intelligence, there's got to be a logical explanation. You probably think you know exactly where this is going. Appearances can be deceiving. In my opinion, your dainty head belongs in a hat store window. So come on in, have a seat, any seat. No, not that seat. Face down. Got my payday loan, so I've already started my secret science project. In fact, I just finished my first batch of homemade razor blades. The anesthesia helps. Brains aren't designed to work 24/7, you know. Fortunately, I have a lot of experience working with disaster. My think tank is often only half full, except for my automatic thoughts and the subdural advertising. At the risk of stating the oblivious, that's why the dead are insensate. It sticks to them like a refrigerator magnet. Because I like my invisible car and the way it lines up with the empty parking spaces, I spent all day yesterday thanking myself. If you think about it, that isn't as funny as you might think. For example, when at last I'm buried face down, wearing my secret agent pajamas. Only Satan will see me smile. An underappreciated fact about cannibals. You can tell a lot about a place by the conviviality of its organ donors. For example, my bank has a relationship manager, and not just for marital emergencies. I guess everybody wants special treatment, although I'm not sure whether the sign in the window says "Don't panic" or "Don't picnic." Naturally, you can expect a few trade-offs here and there, but they're bound to happen whenever you count your blessings. Just because people eat people doesn't mean they're merely cannibals. They have other talents. Some are in sales. Wig. I'm keeping up with the Kardashians. That's the secret to stealth. Now that the corporations are having a ball, so am I, impersonating myself. Of course, with my down market pout and my middle brow tastes, I'm in the low bunk, but must all my states of consciousness be altered? It's a bigger problem than you might think. In my saint's haircut, television running shoes, and recalibrated safety scissors, I like to turn up the blue furnace so I can watch the red flames. Thank goodness I have a magnifying glass eye and an inconclusive birthday. Otherwise, like an old door in need of new paint, this would be just another day. Aunt Moira's wig looks terrific though, doesn't it? No, it can't possibly be poisonous yet. It's just a baby snake. The next two have a kind of shark theme involved. This one's called Kiddie Pool. People seem to like it when I lie to them. It gives them peace of mind, although I'm not sure whether this is due to my strategy or tactics. That's for the experts to decide. After giving the matter my full attention, I've resolved to pull more rabbits out of my coonskin cap. Until then, I'd like to make amends for my deepest apologies. I wouldn't want to offend anyone, especially during my show and tell session of the Dog and Pony Show. Meanwhile, at the library, the arithmetical goldfish swim around like they know something special. They're certain that 2 pairs of pants equal 4 legs, but in a land of 1,000 dances, it's no advantage to do a 2-step at an anniversary party, certainly not during happy birthday season. Of course, who's worried about the brutal animal moments ticking in the baby shark's kiddie pool? Not me. I'm lucky that way. The last piece is called Shark. This is pretty short. Yesterday at the beach, it was so peaceful and soothing, like a dream, that I nearly forgot where I was, at least until all the splashing and flailing began. When the lifeguard jumped up, pointed seaward, and started to yell hysterically, it was hard to tell if he was shrieking, "Man-eating shark," or "Man eating a shark." Fortunately, after I got out of the icy water and dried off, my jaws only hurt for a little while. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Brad. I love your combination of, wit and humor and just like these brilliant observations that you put in your prose poems. So that was wonderful.
Thanks, Francine.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us, Brad Rose. Next is Tina Barry. Tina Barry is the author of Beautiful Raft and Mallflower, Big Table Publishing 2019 and 2016. Her writing can be found in numerous literary journals and anthologies, including SoFlo Pojo, the Best Small Fictions 2020 Spotlighted Story, and 2016, Rattle, Verse Daily, The Mackinac, a journal of prose poetry, One Art, a journal of poetry, Tramp Set, Swim, A Minor, Gyroscope Review, and elsewhere. Tina's third collection, I Tell Henrietta, with art by Kristen Flynn, will be published in 2024 by Aim Higher Press. She has had 3 Pushcart Prize nominations, as well as Best of the Net, Best Microfiction nods. Tina is a teaching artist at the Poetry Barn and Writers.com. Tina Barry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Francine, and thank you, Meg, for inviting me to read, and good to see everyone. So I'm going to read a few pieces from I Tell Henrietta, the book that will be out in July. Okay, so I'm going to start with my year of drawing swans. When the need to render a beak lived inside me, I'd swing one arm around a subway pole, press the lead point of the pencil into the notebook I carried. A dark dot launched the curve of hard bill. Between its eyes, the black knob, gateway to the swoosh of neck. Stashes of swan studies filled the drawer of my bedside table. I'd wake to the sky slouching off its cape and label their parts, a new language I couldn't stop writing. Lore, nares, covert, its ledge of wings, the serrated lamella surrounding its tongues. At jobs I loathed, I'd peek at torn pieces stuffed into folders, darken a wing, shadow the water. Once I had perfected the dusty diamond of its foot, the center digit so real I could feel its scalloped ridges with my finger. I stood in the subway, poised to draw, but the swans never returned to me. So that's the first one. Next one is, I tell Henrietta about Rusty. I tell Henrietta about Rusty, who wanted to tattoo his name above my navel like all his other girlfriends. Rusty. Life had already drawn on my skin, the silver thread of a cesarean scar hiked up in one corner. He called it my second smile, and a more dramatic mark crisscrossed below a hip bone, as if the doctor had sewn with rope instead of thread. But rusty, fenders rusted after too many snowfalls. Cast iron skillets, the kind I fried old Rusty's eggs in, rusted. When he ran his hand over my belly and said, "Come on, babe, do it for me," I thought, "Oh no, this guy won't stick around long enough for the ink to dry." Yes. Several of the poems focus on mothers and mothering, like after. After, rivers swirled black, trees pulled from their roots, tipped to the ground. Falling asleep that evening, a mouse walked on my pillow and ruffled my hair. It paused, then scuttled from one side of the bed to another, as if the bed were a ship alive with strange smells. I reached for it, felt tiny sparks of its fear, its trembling indecision. My daughter crept into our room when she was little. She'd lift the blanket, push her body against my side. I wondered if the mouse had a mother and if her nest had washed away. Then I thought of all mothers, alert to the night, listening. And my last poem is Why I Married a Surfer. When my boyfriend and I walked into a bodega, the shop cat, mouse sated and snoozing, snapped its eyes open and followed us. At the end of the aisle, the cat hurled its heft onto a shelf where it stood eye level with my boyfriend. Something passed between them, some primal recognition I couldn't understand. The cat moved closer, so did he, and they touched noses. It wasn't the first time that kind of thing had happened. Once, as my love sat reading a book on the cement slab known as my backyard, a glittering of hummingbirds rose from behind the chain link fence, circled the sky. I was already smitten with his sun-streaked afro, the puka shell necklace nestled in the dip of his tanned neck, his burritos carnitas. The only creature that had ever visited the backyard was an old crow that looked like the ragged remains of someone's Halloween costume, so the hummingbirds were a sign I couldn't ignore. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Tina. That was really wonderful, and I look forward to seeing the book.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Tina Barry. And now I'm going to turn it over to Meg to introduce the next four readers. Meg?
Thank you so much, Francine. That was great, everybody. I'll first introduce Joshua Michael Stewart. Joshua Michael Stewart is the author of Break Every String, The Bastard Children of Dharma Bums, and Love Something. His work has appeared in the Massachusetts Review, Salamander, Brilliant Corners, 100-Word Story, New Flash Fiction Review, and many others. He lives in Ware, Massachusetts. Welcome, Joshua.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It is an absolute honor to be reading here with so many wonderful writers. I think it's the first time I've actually partaked in a reading where I owned at least one book from every reader. So this is great. The first two poems I'll read are from my latest book, which is Love Something. And the cover was done by the poet Doug Anderson, who some of you may know. The first poem is called Ripping a Charles Simic Poem Out of the New Yorker. The one about the insomniac fortune teller huffing down snowy streets, professing premonitions to the headless mannequins in the tombstone storefronts. I've been roaming the bookstore for hours. The sales lady in the hand-knit sweater, a blinking red bulb of reindeer nose over her right breast, eyes me from the register, sweeping her tongue over her teeth, a primitive gesture that says, I know what you're up to, Buster. Subscription cards trail behind me into the self-help section as surely as bloody footprints lead to the executioner's favorite hot dog stand in Simic's poem. The doll in the fourth stanza has sold her hard luck story about how mice built a nest in her head and a sliver of moonlight reveals a snout emerging from one of her eye sockets. I want to save that doll, so I stealthily pull that page away from all the others, like digging a tunnel through a dungeon wall. The magazine drops like the last brick holding back sunlight. I tuck the poem into my jacket and turn toward the electric doors. The sales lady cries out like a guard from a tower, the red light on her chest flashing gunfire. The doors slide open to the woman standing in fresh snow. She grabs my hand, eager to read. Yellow. I'm wearing my yellow robe, drinking coffee out of a yellow mug that has a rooster on it. When I take coffee into my mouth, I hold off from swallowing and let my tongue believe it's taking a luxurious bath. Traffic swishes down the street. People are busy being busy. For hours, I've been planning a trip to the end of the driveway to pick up the newspaper. Ravens bicker with each other out in the yard. The cats circle my chair, beg to be let out to murder. Each day we inch our way towards death. One day, without knowing it, we buy the clothes we'll be buried in. We smile for a camera that snaps the shot that'll be used for our obituary. I'll probably die in this robe, but until then, I'm going to eat some waffles that come in a box that's also yellow. Often, when a child draws the sun, they'll use either a yellow or orange crayon. The older, more advanced children will use both. In kindergarten, there was this kid who drew his sun in big blood red circles. The teacher once asked him why he chose red for his suns, and he said, "This is how I see it. This is how it is in my world." This next poem will actually be in a new anthology of prose poems, which should be out next month by Madville Press. It's called Fantastic Imaginary Creatures, an anthology of contemporary prose poems. which actually Kathleen also will have some poems. And when I found that out, I was completely stoked because I've been a fan for years. Anyways, this is called Book of Love. The love my partner and I share is a book we've read many times. The pages yellowed, spine broken, no dog ears, but plenty of bat wings. There's a coffee ring on the cover and the phone number of a defunct laundromat scribbled below the final paragraph on the last page. It's a story most people would find dull. Critics have pointed out it lacks a narrative arc. We picked it up years ago at a used bookstore for half price. She ripped out the page revealing the murderer, so we'd always keep guessing. And to distinguish our copy from all the others, I drew a mustache and devil horns on the author's photo with a red pen. This next poem is actually a prose poem hybrid. Actually, it's a haibun. For those who don't know what a haibun is, which I'm sure you guys do, it's an old classic Japanese form that would have a block of text, and then under the block of text, it would be a haiku. And of course, nowadays, there are many variations. Basho, if he didn't invent it, he was the one who made it famous. And then, of course, Isa has his own famous prose poems. Today, you can go to contemporaryhaibunonline.com and see some of the best contemporary haibun written today. This one will actually be published in the spring issue of Modern Haiku, and it's called Syntheurism. Once, when I was 4, my brother snoring in the bunk above, I crept out of bed and padded past my parents' room, down the basement stairs, both hands on the rail, and stepped out the back door, snow crunching under my footy pajamas. And except for the wind in the trees, silence. No one to call me stupid or yell at me for not eating lima beans. And there in the backyard, I looked up at the moon, and no one, not my parents, my brother, not a lover confided in years later, knew I walked away that night and never returned. December rain, a blue jay blooms in tree after tree. And I'll end my section with this little prose poem. It's actually a 100-word prose poem, and it's called Barbara and Gerald. He asks for forgiveness. She hands him sin. Their marriage, a traveling circus caravanning towards tornado green sky. Over the bathroom sink, she plucks her eyebrows, wearing her come fuck me boots. She steps into the kitchen. He's slumped at the table in boxers. She flips the wall switch 3 times. I'm tired of hoping and having hope turn its back on me, she says. He offers pork rinds from an open bag. She drags a chair across the yellowed linoleum, climbs on, twists out the light bulb. I shouldn't have to do this, she says. I shouldn't have to do this in heels. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. I really enjoy the way your pieces display this fearless, unsentimental way of seeing the world and how much you say in just a handful of words. Thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
And next up is Claire Bateman. Claire Bateman is the author of 9 poetry collections, most recently Wonders of the Invisible World with 42 Miles Press, and Scape with New Issues Poetry and Prose. Her hybrid collection, The Pillow Museum, is forthcoming with FC2 Press in January 2025. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you, Meg, and thank you, Francine. This is so great. I'm feeling a lot of awe and inspiration listening to all of you read, and I'm not putting comments on because I get too distracted writing the perfect comment and trying to get everything I'm feeling in. So, but I am taking notes on what you're writing so I can look you all up, and it's a great joy to read with you. And it's also fun to see your homes, your paintings, your pianos, your cats. I saw Joshua's cat giving him or herself a bath. That was just delightful in the corner. I'm going to read from this newest book, and I was going to read other things, but in resonance with Brad, I'm going to read something called The Invisibility Cloak. According to rumor, some purchasers choose to experience invisibility only in a solitary state. Before donning the cloak, they lock their doors and pull their shades. Maybe they get some kind of psychosexual kick out of being inside of, but unable to observe their own bodies. Or they use invisibility as a homeopathic self-treatment for existential irresolution. Or the cloak focuses as a koan by which one simultaneously is and is not present to oneself. Or maybe they so enjoy the delectable sensation of invisibility that they simply want to savor it without distraction. But you're certain you'd never be one of them. Quite the contrary, in fact, you wear the invisibility cloak only when you're around other people. The problem, however, is that you become just as invisible to yourself as you are to everyone else. If you spill something on the fabric, you have to feel around for the stain so you can dab it with a visible detergent stick. And if the hem gets caught in a car door, you know only by the tug, the tearing sound, and the low anguished cry of the cloak itself. Inaudibility costs so much extra that hardly anyone springs for it. And you can't glimpse your own physical boundaries, so you trip and knock things over even more frequently than you do without the cloak. Though isn't that the very reason you saved up for the cloak in the first place, to escape or at least hide your ineptitude? No less remarkable than invisibility itself is its failure, which gives the appearance of something appearing from nothing. Your sister-in-law's cloak from Amazon Used came with a mere 6-hour guarantee because she wasn't keeping close enough track to leave the party in time. It looked to everyone there as though she'd sprung into existence right in front of them. What happens to you is only slightly less alarming. When the Best Buy date rolls over while you're in a darkened movie theater, though you don't become wholly apparent, you're suddenly a kind of shimmer or blur, which constitutes a disturbance. So the usher escorts you out. What to do with an incompletely expired invisibility cloak? You hang it in the back of your closet, but you can't stop thinking about it breathing there in the dark. One night you slip it free from its wire, croon to it soothingly, and wrap it around you in bed as a sleeping shawl. Now you're a pioneer, the first person in history to venture into the unmapped terrain of invisible slumber. Soon, in a dream, yours or the cloak's, you're speeding along an unfamiliar highway when what do you spot ahead of you but the mysterious, legendary, mirror-plated 18-wheeler that haunts the nation's interstates like the Flying Dutchman. You hit the gas, change lanes, and pull alongside it, peering through your window into the sealed cargo space with your dream X-ray vision to see nothing at all. This must be the mobile holding tank of the infamous rogue cloaks that are themselves invisible and exponentially contagious. Any contact with a human renders that person invisible forever, along with anyone that person touches, and anyone the touched person touches, and so on. The dream spooks you. Your cloak is almost out of juice, so to speak. You can't shake the premonition that instead of properly expiring to become just an ordinary run-of-the-mill silk-on-silk brocade with gemstone constellations outerwear, it will turn into a rogue cloak, and there you'll be without any relief from invisibility. What will that do to your already defective ability to navigate the world? And imagine the ensuing pandemic, invisible obstetrical teams attempting to facilitate the births of invisible babies, invisible coroners trying to locate and identify the invisible dead, not to mention all the chaos between those beginning and end-of-life scenarios. Surely you owe it to society to throw the cloak into the sea where it will never again encounter a human. So off you go toward the nearest pier. The cloak seems to weigh more with every step you take, as though invisibility is the heaviest element in the universe, or the garment is actively resisting. Problematic as the cloak has been, and dangerous as it soon may be, you sense that you'll actually miss it. By the time you've reached the edge and are gazing down into the waves, you're feeling pre-nostalgic for the softness and sheen of the fabric, the sapphire eyes of Cygnus, the pearly strings of Lyra, and the susurrating swirl of the flame-colored inner lining. Would it be so terrible if the whole world succumbed to the invisibility pandemic, placing all 8 billion human inhabitants on equal footing as far as awkwardness is concerned? And since it would appear as though they'd precipitously deserted the planet with only their accoutrements and paraphernalia left behind, people would feel so disoriented that they tend to cluster in groups, locating each other by sound and tentative touch. The beauty and fashion industries would unravel. Film and television would feature hand puppets and marionettes manipulated by unseen fingers, the actors' voices, the new celebrities. On all 7 continents, the spoken word would be paramount, with ever mutating worlds of nuance to compensate for the loss of gesture and facial expression. That's why you turn your back on the ocean and head toward the other end of the pier as you slip on the cloak or as it envelops you of its own accord. A gentle, halting, maladroit, highly verbal, and intimately bonded global population, consoled primarily by puppet action. How could this be anything but an improvement? Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. Listening to your work is like being in a jazz club high on espresso. The work is just so deeply creative, and I was absolutely blown away. And thanks for being with us again, Claire. This is the second time we've had you here, and it's a delight.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
You're welcome. Thanks. Next up is our Lorette C. Luzajic. Lorette C. Luzajic reads, writes, publishes, edits, and teaches creative writing. She's the founding editor of the Ekphrastic Review and the Mackinaw, a journal of prose poetry. She's also an internationally collected visual artist, and her lifelong passion for art history fuels most of her stories and poems. Welcome, Lorette, and happy late birthday.
Thank you so much, Meg and Francine, for hosting this wonderful, wonderful event. It's my favorite, and it really is such an honor. You know, I admire so many of you as writers, and it's just wonderful to have heard your work and be here with you today. Thank you. This first piece is from my book, Pretty Time Machine, which is all ekphrastic prose poems. And it was inspired by those old dusty still life paintings of lemons. It's called January River. You didn't say much, so I did all the talking, chattering about my library books or the clues I'd found in the hollow of the dead tree that bridged the creek with your yard. You would wash the dishes, I would dry, and then we would have tea, black with a splash of citrus. I loved the flush of youth still round on your leather cheeks, and I loved the old blue and white cups we sipped from. While we waited for the water to boil, I would stand in the corridor and get lost in the Dutch still lifes, reproductions framed in dirty yellow gilt, like the drapery in winter at the lighthouse. The paintings were heavy and distant, but I was drawn to them. They all said there was more buried in you than were gone in that winter river. I waded through the cracking paint and grime to reach for a bruised apple or a pocket watch in the fading light. I understood that the details of your silence were hidden here, among ruddy crustaceans, skinned lemons, the thin curly rind, ribbon as delicate as paper. Thank you. This one is called Figment. All was darkness in the time before time, you said, and if anyone there had been expecting you to say anything at all, it wasn't that. There was a weird little glitch or some kind of stitch in time where everything was still, and then the clatter of clinking crystal and toothy veneers resumed its former pitch. I could tell from your jittery boots that you were desperate for a cigarette, so I invited you to join me outside. We stood where the sky parted and the path forked, and we stared at the star-spangled stretch of the world without end. I watched the red ember at the end of your cigarette flicker and spit a little, and I wished that I still smoked. You had itty-bitty hands, and they dangled their jumbles of jewels with the same nervous rhythms of the rest of you. I was in that moment convinced you were all that was keeping me alive. I felt plugged in, as if something had changed drastically, as if everything had. Well, you were tiny and jumpy, a rickety rinky-dink of a trinket with sparks coming off of your lips and your frenzied hands. I was thinking right then that you were most likely a figment, electricity or fire or something fleeting and fast. And then you said, well, look, not everything is written already. All stories begin without an ending, even yours. Thank you. The next two are quite short. This one is called Stutter. He had a way with words, dropping them and picking them up over and over in stops and starts. You found something there in the way he would dust them off and start again, in the staccato of syllables, the awkward alliteration, in the consonants of his vivisected vocabulary. He would raise a finger and lower his voice when he needed to summon the courage to carry on. Then all the words would flow into a warm river of euphony. You wanted him to read you. You wanted him to tell you your name, how those sharper edges, the first locutions, would give way to a gorgeous tumble of idioms and appellations. You imagined his tongue would taste tart and nervous and fertile like apples. You wanted him to kiss you, to take the words right out of your mouth. Thank you. My last one is from the Neon Rosary, which is tiny prose poems. They're all very short and also all acrostic. This one is called Midnight Train. Well, you had a cat that looked like Grace Jones, all crazy cheekbones and hard angles, midnight coat and hungry eyes. You were half wild yourself, exactly as you'd warned me. If I didn't believe you at first, then yes, I guess, I confess, I was impressed or maybe fooled by the still waters and forgot how deep they run in mirrors. I was all about glow and spectacle, but even so, only looking for a safe space to land. You were a slower simmer than cheap glitter, and I should have known better. And you told me straight up, it ain't me, babe. And I followed anyways. And so now I know how I would always find the undertow or the oncoming train, even if you were the dark horse I never saw coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lorette. Those were absolutely beautiful. I love the associative logic and the curiosity in your pieces, and listening to your work is like being under a bit of a magic spell. And it was just wonderful to hear you reading tonight. I love those pieces.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and reading with us again as well. We have a couple of writers here that have been with us before, which is really a treat to have you back. Next up is Kathleen McGookey. Kathleen McGookey has published 4 books and 4 chapbooks of prose poems, most recently Cloud Reports from Celery City Chapbooks. Her book Paper Sky, Press 53, is forthcoming. Her work has appeared in Copper Nickel, Epoch, Glassworks, Hunger Mountain, Los Angeles Review, North American Review, and the Southern Review. Welcome, Kathleen. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Meg, and thanks, Francine, for having me. And it's just delightful to be here with everyone and to hear your work. I am like Claire, I can't do the chat because I'm concentrating on listening, but I love being in the company of all these voices. So thank you. So I'm going to read a little from my latest chapbook, Cloud Reports. Celery City Press is a tiny press in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and they focus on Kalamazoo writers and Michigan writers. It's a series of related prose poems, and I wrote them over a period of a couple years when the everyday news was so upsetting, and I wrote them to calm myself down. The other thing that was happening is while the news was happening and there was nothing I could do about that. My children were becoming adults and they were going out into the world and making their own choices. And I was watching that, and also nothing I could do about that. So I would go in my office and sit down and just look out over a field and look at the sky and try to breathe. And I would start by writing what I saw in the sky. And inevitably, what I was feeling would enter the poem. So the poems are a mixture of interior and exterior. And I kind of felt like they were a mixture of motion and stillness, because if you look at the sky for long enough, at first, it doesn't seem like anything's happening if it's not a windy day, but then things are suddenly changing. So that's how I came to write the poems. When I put the chapbook together, I took all the titles off. The titles were just Cloud Report and a date, and I thought the poems worked better just as a series without the titles. So here is one from early in the book. How can the sky hold so many kinds of clouds? A single bright line, curvy and segmented like the spine of a fish. Another white line like steam billowing from a train. Soft navy splotches spread out against softer, lighter blue. A swooped up gray curve like the head of a bird. This is what I think about after you leave, and how the trees are still and the sky seems still, but everything changes faster than I can write. Clouds that minutes ago held streaks of milky rose have disappeared. Nothing has moved except one angel who is swooping low over the trees. So, thank you. One thing that happened during this period of time, my son is 22 and I live in Michigan, and he moved to the UP to take a job at a ski resort. And his job was overnight to work on the hill, making snow and grooming the hill. So very often he was driving to and from work in bad weather, in the dark. And it wasn't a great thing for a parent who was 10 hours away to know what was going on. And one thing that happened was he totaled a car and called the next day. And my first words should have been, "Oh my gosh, you must be okay. You're talking to me. How are you?" However, this was the second car that he totaled. And so my response was, how can this be happening again? And being so far away, I wondered, am I really hearing what happened? So this poem came out of that experience. Like a reliable courier, last night's storm piled snow onto the roof and the porch and the field. Now sun declares everything under powder blue sky. The landscapes distilled, white, black, gray. A crow perches so long in the far oak, it can't be real. Your voice is thick with sleep when you call, and I should be grateful you survived. Car totaled. First you say it slid into the ditch. Then you say you hit 2 deer. Already, water drips steadily from the sharp edge of the roof. A sundog curves along a cloud, its striated light, greeny blue that fades to gold, just faint enough to make me question what I see. So, oh, thank you. I often felt, after I wrote a poem, I often felt better, but it wasn't that I solved anything. It was the fact that I could concentrate on creating something and concentrate on the poem that took me out of my own head of worries for that period of time. And so to me, that was the real value, that act of just getting a little relief from my brain. And so here's one of my favorites from the chapbook, although no editor wanted it, but I'm delighted to read it to you today. Now the angels are in my kitchen, whipping cream in big silver bowls. I am tired of being afraid. When they look at the sky, an airplane slowly disappears into sweet white chiffon, bare wet trees stark against it. I didn't invite them, but like clouds, a few arrived anyway. They gaze over my shoulder toward the horizon when I ask, what happens now? They offer me a soft chair with the best view and a cup of hot chocolate, but the clouds form a wall as far as I can see. So the angels curl on the couch, then tuck their robes around their knees. Clearly, they have time. Thank you so much. This has just been such a highlight for me. I've really enjoyed being here with you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. I gotta say, whatever editors didn't accept that piece are absolutely nuts.
Well, thank you.
Same. Okay. Anyway, I so admire how each piece is both unsettling and at the same time weirdly comforting. I think just to hear it and to hear that you've written it, and it has a wonderful. I'm a mom as well. Had a wonderful effect on me, actually. Thank you so much for reading those beautiful pieces. I'm gonna give it back to you, Francine, to close the show tonight.
Thank you so much, Megan. Listening to all of these prose poems kind of helped me nail down more in my mind what is it that makes a prose poem. And it felt like, well, it had all the imagery. There were so many stunning lines and images that were coming out. So it's very poetic. But it also had the flow of prose. It wasn't constantly stopping at the end of a line. So it's that combination of it looks like prose, but it's really it's really poetry. And so it's that combination, that very elusive combination, that makes it so special. And I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to have, seriously, when I say this, 8 of the best prose poets out there reading for you tonight, really. I just feel honored to be in your presence. So thank you for sharing your wonderful work with us. And, here at the Prose Garden, we try to honor all kinds of prose. And so I'm glad that the Poetry Month gave us the opportunity to focus in on the prose poem. And thank you to our readers, Bethany Jarmul, Alexis, Rhone, Fancher, Brad Rose, Tina Barry, Joshua Michael Steward, Claire Bateman, Lorette C. Luzajic, and Kathleen McGookey, and my beautiful and wonderful co-host, Meg Pokrass. I'm going to turn off the recording, and thank you very much. We'll see you next month, Prose Garden, and drive safely. Thank you. Good night now.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, yes.